If you think that the German occupier and the Dutch collaborators were on the same page, well, you're wrong. In this video, we're going to talk about the Dutch SS, which shouldn't be confused with volunteers in the Waffen-SS, although this came forth of it. This faction, later known as the Germanic SS, was the ideological opponent of the N.S.B, the Dutch Fascist Party. More on the Dutch SS coming up. Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler imagined the Netherlands, Belgium and northern France as a province of the German Third Reich. Its name would be Burgundia. This referred to the era of the Burgundian Netherlands. When the Germans had conquered the Netherlands, the Nazi Germanic ID would become a reality. But this wouldn't be so easy. First and foremost, most Dutch citizens weren't drawn to extreme ideologies. Not communism, nor fascism or National Socialism. And second, the N.S.B, the Nationaal-Socialistische Movement, and its leader Anton Mussert, they had kind of different ideas and were definitely not on the same page as the Germans. See, Mussert, he envisioned the Netherlands as a fascist state in a fascist Europe, but having some independence from Germany. But other N.S.B members, such as Meinhoud van Tonningen, he envisioned the Netherlands as being part of a larger Germanic Reich. Do notice that Mussert did want to cater the Germans as much as possible, and he did obey to the German demand of establishing the Dutch SS, the Nederlandse SS, as an organization within the N.S.B, which happened in September 1940. However, this faction was on paper part of the N.S.B. In reality, it was a subsidiary of the German Allgemeine SS, General SS, which was a civil division within the SS organization. In the eyes of the Dutch SS, the N.S.B. was a half-heartedly attempt to bring unity among the Germanic people. Their goal was to integrate the Germanic races in one state. Any reservation the N.S.B. had towards the integration of the Netherlands in the Germanic Reich was seen as separatism and thus treason. And where the N.S.B. provided lip service to its members with religious backgrounds, the Dutch SS men saw this as unacceptable. N.S.B. leader Mussert was seen as a cowardly opportunist who chose for anti-Semitism only when the Germans took over the country. The Dutch SS, they were the real anti-Semites and the real anti-communists, and they believed Mussert was a fraud. Thing is, despite this criticism, this severe criticism, the Dutch SS was still part of the N.S.B, talking about a toxic working environment. The SS foreman was Henk Feldmeijer. Feldmeijer belonged to the Volkische group of the N.S.B, just as Meinhoud van Tonningen, who wanted to make the Netherlands part of a Germanic Reich. Feldmeijer despised Mussert and was more in line with Himmler and his deputy in the Netherlands, Hans Albin Rauter. This was formally recognized when the Dutch SS swore its oath on Hitler in May 1942.
De plechtige eedsaflegging.
In October 1942, the organization was renamed to Germanic SS in the Netherlands and had branches in other German-occupied countries, Norway, Denmark and Belgium in Flanders. Feldmeijer, he saw the SS men not as politicians nor soldiers. Yes, political and military training was required, but the SS men didn't have to intervene in everyday politics. They had to fight for the ideals. They had to carry out these National Socialist ideas in everyday life during their work, for example. In his everyday profession, he had to propagate these values as much as possible. In his spare time, he had to make himself available to the SS as a political soldier. On one evening and 2 Sundays per month had to be dedicated to exercise, shooting, sport and political education.
Op een zomerzonnewendefeest vonden naar oud gebruik sportwedstrijden plaats, waaraan de verschillende standaarden van de Germaanse SS in Nederland deelnamen.
There was a training facility in Avigor. Members had to be of Aryan descent, a topic sometimes ignored because of members who had Indian background, physically healthy, and prepared for blind obedience. Membership of the N.S.B. was not required. Many of its initial members used to be member of the Nationaal-Socialistische Dutch Workers' Party, the NSNAP. When this party was abolished near the end of 1941, many of its members joined the Dutch SS. Joining the Dutch SS didn't equal to serving on the Eastern Front, although this was expected. As a result of this, the Dutch SS never became a mass movement because many of its members were dispatched to the Eastern Front. The Dutch SS had around 7,000 members. Its members came forth of the outlawed WA, the Resilience Department, which were the goons of the N.S.B. and was reinstated after the German takeover. Most of them came from urban areas in the west of the country. Others were veterans of the Waffen-SS, such as Feldmeijer himself. Their uniforms were very similar to those of the SS in Germany and the WA. They wore the iconic black cap with metal skull, but above that they had the wolf's angel, the wolf hook. On the right sleeve they wore a black diamond-shaped SS patch. On the left sleeve they had a silver-colored wolf hook inside a black-red triangle. Their shirt was sometimes black, as with the WA, or white, as with the German SS. Rank decorations were after German model, were applied on the right collar patch. Leader Henk Feldmeijer had a unique patch, a rounded trifos. On the left was a regimental number, and there were 5 Dutch regiments. Standaard 1 in Friesland, Groningen en Drenthe, 2 Overijssel en Gelderland, 3 Noord-Holland en Utrecht, 4 Zuid-Holland en Zeeland, and 5 Noord-Brabant en Limburg. As the war progressed, the Dutch SS men disappeared from the streets in the Netherlands. And that was because they were dispatched to the Eastern Front.
150 mannen van de Nederlandse SS vertrekken naar het Oostfront om zich in te zetten in de strijd tegen het bolsjewisme. Met aan het hoofd en voorman der Nederlandse SS Feldmeijer, die zijn mannen naar het Oostfront vergezelt, marcheert de troep door Den Haag.
Many of them didn't return. Those who stayed behind joined the WA men and became part of Landstorm Nederland, a last-ditch army to fight off the Western Allies when they liberated the country and also to terrorize the Dutch population. Feldmeijer was killed in his car when strafed by an Allied plane early 1945. Rost van Tonningen was detained after the war and died in prison in June 1945. And Mussert was arrested after the war, trialed and executed in 1946. Thanks to my patrons you see on screen right now, and a special thanks to Janusz Dosinkiewicz, Joan, Justin Trabell, Peter King, Tanya Dixie, Henry Clarkson, Rob Park, Andrea Martic, and Fernando Lopez Ojeda. If you want to learn about the Dutch volunteers in the Waffen-SS, I have a whole playlist for you. Check it out if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.